One Step Ahead by Lundquist and Beslick.
And welcome to One Step Ahead Radio. It's 27th of September 2024. We are still on the planet Earth, and this is a session today which is a bit longer than the one that we used to have every Friday. And One Step Ahead Radio is, as you know, one of the best updates out there on sustainability and ESG. This week, we will dwell into a more interesting topic than I think we have discussed in many cases so far, which is related to human rights. Human rights has been one of the areas that we could say that over the last couple of years has been in the shadows of climate change related action or inaction in many cases. And today we will present some very interesting research done by Lundquist on this. And for that reason, I have two colleagues here. One is James, and the second is Sarah, and they will bring us into a topic and also what are the key conclusions from the research they have done recently on human rights and businesses. But before that, I'll give you a bit of an update on what's going on around the world. And one of the interesting things that has just came up and been revealed, it is in Guardian, is how the fossil fuel industry helps spread anti-protest laws across the US. Basically, the Guardian has obtained the email conversation between the lobbyists and the lawmakers in several states, in Utah and West Virginia, Idaho and Ohio, where the basically lobbyists are doing everything they can to support oil and gas efforts to curb any kind of civil disobedience protest, in many cases also stipulating that the punishment for these things will be a maximum of 10 years prison sentence. This is, of course, outrageous and very interesting from a perspective of the current climate week in the US, in New York, where many people are participating, trying to understand what is the action that needs to be taken and also what is the current development. Now, from reading some of the posts, both on LinkedIn and other social media from the US and from the Climate Week, I could pick a couple of other things that are interesting, which many of the people are indicating that this is not a climate week, it's more of a business meeting week, where the businesses are meeting and trying to understand how they can actually make profit in this space. And when it comes to the profit, it's also noteworthy to say that many banks, especially US banks, are now putting their money behind the further development and investment in nuclear energy. And this is based on the fact that current action and current investments or current transition space is not really providing the results that we're expecting. It's quite obvious that we will need nuclear energy going forward. You may have different opinion, and many people do. Nevertheless, the banks are clearly indicated Now, there is something else which is related to banks, and this one is a bit sort of a quite scary actually to read. The ING, which is the Netherlands-based bank, has emerged as the only global systemically important bank to agree to test a new framework for ensuring that the climate claims made by the finance industry are actually credible. You have to take this in. This is the only bank around the world, systemically important, especially in Europe, that has basically taken in that information and is prepared to do this. Deutsche Bank and some other banks are evaluating if they will be able to participate or willing to participate. But nevertheless, it is interesting sort of a development, both from a perspective of what banks are planning to do and what banks are not really doing. Now, in terms of what is going on related to human rights research, I have with me today Sarah Rusconi, which is one of the people from Lundquist that has been participating in this research. And I would like to invite Sarah to join us. And Sarah, please let us know what you bring with you in relation to this research that Lundquist has done. And also, I mean, looking at the human rights sort of related things, why is this important for any company that is operating around the world?
Hi, Sasha, and thank you. Yes, I'm Sara Rusconi. I'm partner at Lundquist and head of strategic communication. And it's the question the company asked us: why did you consider human rights as a topic? And of course, like despite the Universal Declaration of Human Rights dates back to 1848, we still frequently see violation on fundamental rights, even in developing countries, even in our country, in Italy. So this is not really the only reason why we decided to look upon this topic. And there are other key factors. Of course, one of the most important is the legislation. The Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive reinforces the obligation for large company to responsibly manage the supply chain. And although this consider large company, considering the supply chain, this has impact also on small, medium enterprises. So in a way, really touch upon many companies. And also,
Yeah, Sarah, just one question, just for the audience as well. On the one hand, we have CSRD, and then we have a CSRDDD. This is a sort of a due diligence part that needs to support transparency part. A company is aware of the fact that this human rights due diligence is a quite cumbersome thing to be done. What's your take on that?
the large company are aware of that, but I don't think they really understand the impact of such a directive and the way they have to really look upon the entire supply chain. And small companies, they have still to really understand what's the impact on them and what
And
changes.
they are basically the supply chain. I mean, they are scope
Exactly.
3 if we think about in
Exactly.
these terms. And they need to understand that the importance of this is going to increase, and probably also the cost related to it, because this is something that companies will actually need to do, yeah?
Exactly, and the risk also to be like really cut off of the supply chain, so really lose a customer in the long term. And as for climate, they are still trying to understand this, and I don't think the small companies or medium companies they really understood the difference that this will make in the near future.
But you have done this in Italy, and I guess many Italian companies are also suppliers to larger companies outside Italy. I mean, there is a chain sort of things that needs to happen in this space. What's the approach to research you have taken in this context?
Okay, what we wanted to change is that like the perception that this is a topic that touch upon only on a selected number of companies, which work in specific sectors such as the extraction, oil and gas, or they have like long supply chains. But this is not the case because it's really something that touch upon the people, also your employees, your customer, the community, and there is like a more like public awareness regarding this topic. So you really have to consider that where you live, where you operate, there is really an attention on what is what's going on, and also investors are getting more and more interested in the topics, integrating human rights practice in their ESG consideration. And what we have seen is that investors are like going beyond this traditional high risk sector and taking like enlarging the spectrum of the company they are taking. I mean, asking for more and more information, and probably you can provide your view on this.
Sure. I mean, sure. Look, Sarah. I mean, I used to these kind of things for many years. Actually, visiting companies on the ground in many places around the world to actually understand how they manage these issues, and human rights being one of them. And I think over the last years, the human rights as a topic has gone a bit sort of shadow-wise because of the climate impact. But however, if you look at the way how the consequences of climate change is hitting around the world, especially different sectors, the human rights are becoming more important because many of the companies will have to deal with the other types of issues which are consequences of this, and all of them are actually related to human rights, social sort of a cohesion, local communities and all of these other things. However, still, I think looking at the reports from many companies and following that, it's quite obvious that human rights transparency is still much more limited, I would say, than the one that is now growing, and it's related to climate change action or inaction in many places. So I think, from investment point of view, it's increasing, especially in Europe, because of the upcoming legislation on CSRDD. There will be a lot of need for both capacity to do that due diligence, and we will also include much of that information in our decision-making process for companies. So it is becoming, I think, because it's regulated, especially in Europe, more important from investment point of view. But with that said, I mean, it's still, and this is my sort of a question to you. When you look at the research you have done, can you see that, that the companies are taking these sort of a necessary steps, or is this still something that they see as nice to have, but not really important for the business?
They see it important for the business, but as a compliance way of looking at it. So what we see is that they still really stick to what they have to say and not really going beyond that. And that really the point of our study was to see if they really managed to communicate around that. To see if such a complex and sensitive topic can be communicated in an effective and distinctive way. So it's like the message is that human rights is a valuable opportunity for companies to connect more to people and building trust and really being open on what they do and the steps they are taking. And this is something that is still to be understood.
I mean, look, for the people in the audience in general, most of the exclusions that are done by investment community around the world are done on the basis of human rights violation. There are very few exclusions, straight-on exclusions that have been done historically for climate-related violation, because these kind of things are something of novelty last couple of years. Prior to that, and in many cases, it's actually human rights violation, and this is something that is also relevant if you look at the big pension funds around the world, including so-called Norwegian oil fund that has excluded some of the oil and gas companies from the investments, not on the basis of the fact that they are producing more oil, but because they are violating human rights in some places of the world. Now we have James with us. James, welcome to One Step Ahead Radio, and you have also been involved in this research, and I'm trying to understand. Sarah has touched upon some of these things. What are the sort of key conclusions and takeaways that you can share with the audience in relation to the research you have done?
Yeah, good morning, Sasha, and good morning, everybody. I guess when we did this research, we really didn't know what level of maturity we would find. I suppose we were super skeptical, right? And when you go into these cases, you think there's going to be a lot of bad news and and very little good news. What's in a couple of interesting things. We also looked at the materiality analysis of all the companies, not just how they communicate. And it's interesting, like 2/3 of the companies we looked at and across different sectors, have human rights in their materiality analysis as a topic that's material, and quite a lot of them have it as a high importance, as a high priority topic. So it's kind of on the radar, and you look at code of ethics, or if there's a sort of a formal policy, you see all of those coming into place now, and that's something that seems to be becoming increasingly sort of standard practice. And as Sarah said, it's very much that compliance-driven part. What we were looking to be interested in is how companies communicate, what they talk about, what topics. Within human rights, it's huge. It's a hugely different set of issues that companies have to deal with, and obviously here there's much less, and it's much more. It tends to be formal, and sort of half of companies that we're looking at, have some kind of description of the initiatives they're doing, the actions they're taking to address these topics. And the really interesting thing that I suppose it's interesting just to look at what are emerging now as best practices or innovative practices is around advocacy, which is an idea. We talk about advocacy a lot now in terms of companies. And in this case, it's kind of taking up the agenda for change, not just being aware of the topic and having a policy, but actually talking about how you're trying to take action. And we've seen, for example, in the food and beverage industry, some very interesting examples about companies, sort of, we've looked broadly across different sectors in Europe for what are these kind of leading lights who are kind of showing the way. And they're being sort of much more sort of open and transparent, and using also kind of stories and LinkedIn as ways to sort of open up the discussion and to speak about human rights, which is interesting. A few cases you can see this kind of overtaking the whole ESG language, and human rights starting to become a return to saying, well, let's focus on the impacts we have on humans and people generally.
Yeah, it's all about people. It's all about people. It's about the employees and clients and customers, business partners. It's all about people, actually. So I think it's, as you point out, it should be a relevant topic for any company. Yeah.
So that's interesting. And very, very few top management coming out and taking a position, putting their face to an issue like this. But we think those are the kind of areas that are going to become interesting as we go forward on this topic. It's really starting to hit the radar. And I think companies need to sort of really understand what it means for them specifically, and then sort of be more open and be more transparent on that front in terms of how they address it, what that looks like, giving people an idea of, you tend to think of this only as kind of crisis management. But there's also, I think, a lot of positive stories in terms of social impact, partnerships, again, leading companies talking more about what they're doing in collaboration with others, business coalitions that are forming up around this. And so it's sort of helping people to understand what actually companies do in practice, rather than just, a cold declaration or policy that kind of sits there unchanged for years and years. That's the kind of things that we've been looking at.
But I'm also thinking about, the sort of, what are the lessons learned? What are the things that you see from the research that companies should focus more on going forward? What is the sort of a recommendation, one or two recommendations from your side in relation to increase, demand? Because I'm thinking also that CSRD stipulates that if you fail to comply with the regulation, it's up to 5%, or at least 5% of your revenue can be, you can be fined for these kind of things. It's a quite severe sort of a punishment if you, from a legal point of view, if you fail to do so.
You've touched on one of the really key points, which is the regulation, the compliance, and the penalties. And we had a really good discussion with some companies as well this past week, and what comes out is the whole internal discussion, right? So it's not just what you say externally, but how you frame it internally with top management and with the directors who are responsible, in terms of legal, compliance, supply chain management. And how do you frame that discussion? Because if you come at it purely from oh my God, there's these directives, it's going to impact us directly or indirectly, everyone goes into this kind of, let's minimize, let's not talk about it, let's just do what's necessary. And I think a lot of companies, as a first step, it's really important how they have that conversation internally, and how they call it, how they describe it, how they articulate and this topic in terms of bringing people on board internally. Because otherwise, when you get to sort of more delicate situations, people just close up and say no. Well, it's let's not be open. Let's talk about this as less as possible. Let's just do the compliance piece and leave it at that, and sort of miss that opportunity, because then people who work in sustainability communications, they just have the door closed in their face.
Yeah. I'm also thinking some of these things, you mentioned that, you touched upon that, could be fairly sensitive to communicate. You may have a breaches of some human rights related, it could be union rights, could be wages and benefits, could be suppliers. What is your experience on how companies deal with this kind of, it could be impacting your stock performance as well, and regulation.
Super delicate. In fact, while we've been doing this research, we've been working with a client who's actually been caught up in their whole sector. Really has been revealed as being compliant with or complicit with human rights abuses within their supply chain, and it's been in the media. And internally, obviously, there's a sort of a veto. It's like, we're not going to talk about this. And And it takes a long time to change. It takes a long time to address things and to change practices. And I think there's a growing awareness that, you can't stay silent forever. And so being able to talk about your process, being able to talk about what they do in different parts of the supply chain, to start to open that conversation is something that they're trying to push. That they can't just sort of pretend it hasn't happened. And a lot of other companies, sort of also in the extractives industry, we've seen examples of, companies afterwards coming out and saying, here are the lessons we learned, having a bit of humility, which is very, very rare in our business. But, coming out and saying, we got it wrong and this is what we've changed and this is how we've learned can be actually quite important as a way to come back from these problems.
No, look, James, I completely agree. Look, over the years, and zillions of reports I've read in this space, it's a very rare occasion that I come across, not only me, but many other analysts, occasion to come across information where company says, well, we do have some human rights issues, related challenges. This is how we, in a humble way, try to address them. Usually the information we get is that we don't have any problem. We may have a supply chain in one of the most notorious countries in the world, which is operating under the dictatorship, but we still don't have any human rights issues problems. And of course, to us investors, it indicates that something maybe is not as right as it should be. So what you're sort of pointing out is that the partnerships and also being more transparent about the challenge itself is probably one of the ways how you can also gain trust externally, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, there's so many companies who say, oh, we'll just do everything and then we'll communicate afterwards. And there is no afterwards. You're never going to get to sort of a perfect world where everything is all right. And people don't believe you when you say, oh, it's everything's fine. And we just, we've got it all under control.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is always like, okay, yeah, sure. So yeah, talking about the process, talking about change, I think that's really key, talking about change. Because people are very critical on this. And it's one of the first things that public perceptions around companies, get people really to lose faith and lose trust. And so to be able to overcome that by being a bit more open and honest and actually addressing what's going wrong and how you're trying with others to resolve that, I think can be very powerful.
Sarah, you're still there. Thanks, James. What are the sort of, James touched upon these opportunities and challenges, but, from your point of view, when you interact and you do interact with the companies on a daily basis, what do you think can help them to sort of take these first steps and become more, get more courage to move this forward? Because it's not only about the courage, it's also upcoming legislation. So I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah, we did have a workshop this week about the topic human rights, and we put together people and we make them discuss about the challenges and the opportunities. And as James anticipated, the challenge is like to convince internally colleagues, especially colleagues that are dealing with this information or with human rights policies and so on, that they should be more open, that they can communicate, they can be open up and speak about what they are doing, and also about the process they are taking. And the challenge, and this is really the biggest challenge that they see. Really convince people internally that this should be done, and the opportunity are about really connect to people, being credible, because as you said, the violation of human rights really touch upon our world, ourselves, and something is more like really touching, and we are more sensitive compared to violation on climate and environment. So there is these opportunities or connecting and be more credible compared to the past, where
I'm just thinking in that workshop you did, I mean, people sitting quiet, are they afraid of discussing this, or is this something they actually engage in terms of constructive dialogue about what can be done? I mean, my experiences is that in many of these workshops, especially when you discuss human rights issues related to business, it's like people are quite quiet. Yeah.
No, definitely they were more active, really proactive. Of course, the people were from communication and sustainability, most of them. So they felt they had they were the one that had to make the change inside the company. I mean, if it's not us, we will do
Mm,
this change, no one else. And so they were really participating when there were different company from financial to oil and gas, industrial, and different kind of companies. So they were really participating and shared experiences and ideas on how to make this change. So really collaborating to take something in when they went home.
mm. I think if money is the only driver for corporates to do ESG sustainability, there is also a question: can you make money on human rights? And the thing is that many companies do not understand is that they can actually do that by addressing these issues, creating trust, brand perception, and many other things. And I think there are some cases around the world where companies have been very successful in doing so. Now, with this, thank you, Sarah and James, for participation. I think that we can also inform people that they can get a summary of your research. They can visit your website and see how they can learn more about your research, not only about this one, but a lot of other research that Lundqvist has done over the years. Now, we are done with that part of the radio, One Step Ahead radio today. There is a last sort of a update that I wanted to share with you, which is related to one of the biggest European projects in the northern Sweden that has come under the big scrutiny in terms of the leverage on the project. Is of course the Northvolt, which is the battery producing facility in the northern Sweden, one of the biggest European investments to secure battery production in Europe, basically not related to dependency we have today on China. The company is struggling to survive. There is a clear indication that maybe within the next couple of weeks, if the financing of the company will not be resolved, there will be a bankruptcy and, of course, reconstruction of this. This is a sad chapter in the European sort of current history on developing the renewable energy capacity, especially in terms of the battery development. Of course, this is a huge investment. The many companies and pension funds around Europe have been investing in Northvolt and have been hoping to secure the production of this facility, not only in Sweden, there is one in Germany. This is very much related to a fact that Northvolt as a company has not been delivering properly over the last couple of years. The capacity has been just 2% of the total capacity on delivery side. And today, due to the fact that Northvolt is not being financially supported, the big pieces of equipment or batteries, cathodes that are used for them are now purchased from China. This is a big defeat for European Union. It's a significant defeat for, I think, for Sweden in terms of how this has been dealt with. Of course, there are a lot of discussion about why this is the case and how this could be changed. Let us hope that Northvolt and investors that have been supporting company can find a solution to sustain this production, to keep us independent from the Chinese dependency, and also try to find a way that we can continue developing European capacity to produce not only batteries, but also recycling facilities and other things. With this, I would like to thank you very much for joining this event today, joining One Step Ahead Radio. Share this with your friends, family, whoever you think colleagues should participate. It is an update that we do on a weekly basis. Let us know if you think there are topics that we should address that we are not addressing, areas that you think we should delve into, and also if you have any other suggestions, please let us know. And thank you very much. I wish you a great Friday and good weekend after this. Thank you very much for today.